What happens when two of television's most beloved personalities clash in a way that nobody saw coming? What started as a routine interview on the Clarkson show turned into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history, with Trevor Noah ultimately walking off set in frustration. But the real story isn't just about the dramatic exit. It's about the conversation that led up to it, and how a simple question about comedy sparked a debate that neither host nor guest was prepared for. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about celebrity interviews gone wrong, because this one is going to blow your mind. From the moment Trevor Noah walked onto Kelly Clarkson's brightly lit stage, something in the room felt slightly off. Kelly welcomed him with her usual glowing smile and upbeat voice, but the chemistry felt less fluid than usual. Trevor settled in with that smooth, easy smile he's known for, answering her questions about new projects and his transition away from The Daily Show. Everything seemed ordinary until Kelly leaned forward and asked a question that carried an unexpected edge. "So, Trevor, I've been wondering, do you ever feel like comedy has become too political these days? Like maybe we've lost the pure joy of just making people laugh?" Trevor's smile tightened. He paused, choosing his response carefully. "That's an interesting question, Kelly. What do you mean by too political?" Kelly gestured with her hands, trying to keep things light. "It just feels like comedians today have to make everything some big statement. Don't you miss when comedy was just about fun?" Trevor countered gently, explaining that comedy has always been political. From medieval jesters to Chaplin to Carlin, comedy has always reflected society's flaws. Kelly nodded politely, but pushed back, implying modern comedians had become more like lecturers than entertainers. Trevor's tone sharpened ever so slightly as he asked who she meant specifically. Kelly refused to name names, brushing off the tension with a forced laugh. The audience sensed a shift. Trevor explained the role comedy played in apartheid-era South Africa. Comedy wasn't a distraction. It was survival. Kelly dismissed the comparison as unrelated, insisting Americans just wanted to escape heavy topics when they watch comedy. That's when the debate began to. Trevor asked her whether she believed American issues weren't serious enough for comedy to address. Kelly insisted she wasn't saying that, only that people needed to laugh without all the heaviness. Trevor challenged the logic, pointing out that dismissing political comedy as less legitimate was dangerous. Kelly's irritation began to show as she accused him of being dramatic. Tension spread across the studio like static in the air, and everyone knew they were watching a conversation that had cracked far beyond its original boundaries. The atmosphere inside the studio had changed, from mildly tense to uncomfortably charged as the conversation dug into deeper territory. Kelly leaned back, trying to regain control by insisting that people simply wanted lighter entertainment. Trevor disagreed, arguing that assuming audiences couldn't handle truth, blended with humor, underestimated their intelligence and ignored the reality of those whose experiences weren't cushioned by privilege. Kelly's expression tightened at the word privilege. Trevor clarified that he wasn't invalidating her struggles, but that her view of comedy as something light and purely joyful came from a life experience shaped differently than others. But the nuance was lost as Kelly heard only accusation. Her tone sharpened with emotional weight. "Are you saying I don't understand struggle? Or that I haven't faced challenges?" Trevor tried to de-escalate, but wouldn't back down from his point. The conversation, which had started about comedy, now teetered on the edge of something more personal. The audience sat frozen, watching both sides defend their identities rather than their arguments. Then Kelly said the sentence that changed everything. "You've made millions of dollars making jokes about America while being from another country. Don't lecture me about privilege." The gasp that erupted from the audience came before Trevor even reacted. Kelly seemed to realize instantly that she had crossed a line. Trevor went completely still, his face unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and icy. "Excuse me? What exactly are you implying?" Kelly scrambled to soften her words, insisting she didn't mean it like that, but the damage was done. Trevor pressed her, demanding an explanation as to why his birthplace was relevant to their discussion. Kelly attempted to frame her point as being about different perspectives, but Trevor saw through the dodge immediately. "Kelly, You made my nationality part of the argument. You implied that being an immigrant makes my commentary on American society less valid. The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Kelly tried to argue that outsiders can't always understand the full American experience. Trevor let out a humorless laugh. He reminded her that he was an American citizen who had chosen this country, lived in it, worked in it, and contributed to it. Yet here she was implying he was still an outsider. Kelly kept insisting he was twisting her words, but her voice lacked conviction, and the audience could feel her losing control of the narrative she'd built. Trevor pressed on, explaining how often he had heard the same argument from people trying to dismiss his commentary. Kelly insisted he was misinterpreting her entirely, but Trevor wasn't having it. Because it sounded like you just told me to go back where I came from, politely. Kelly's face drained of color, and she denied it repeatedly, asking him to stop putting words in her mouth. Trevor challenged her once again to clarify why his birthplace was relevant. The longer she hesitated, the more it became clear to everyone in the room that she couldn't produce a clean explanation. Her voice began to shake with frustration. I think you're being overly sensitive. You're playing the victim card. The audience recoiled. Even the crew members froze. Trevor's expression shifted from shock to fury. He stood up abruptly. Let me tell you something about sensitivity, Kelly. He spoke of apartheid, of being a mixed-race child whose very existence was illegal, of coming to America and working his way up only to have someone reduce his perspective to the place he was born. Kelly insisted she wasn't questioning his personhood, but even she seemed aware that her argument was falling apart. Trevor explained that commentary is inseparable from personhood. The life experiences that shape him are the same experiences that shape his comedy. Kelly tried to pull things back, reminding Trevor they were on television. Trevor shot back that concern for optics should have existed. Before she questioned his legitimacy, she attempted another truce, suggesting they agree to disagree. Trevor refused, explaining that dismissing someone's perspective because of their immigration status wasn't a simple difference of opinion. Kelly asked if Trevor was saying they couldn't disagree. He clarified that the problem wasn't disagreement, it was using his birthplace to invalidate his voice. The discussion had become more than a debate. It had become a confrontation about identity, legitimacy, and prejudice. The audience sat tense and silent. Kelly, now visibly frustrated, accused Trevor of coming to the show looking for a fight. Trevor was stunned. He reminded her that she had initiated every escalation. Kelly insisted he could have answered politely. Trevor asked her whether she would have questioned his legitimacy if he'd been born in Iowa instead of Johannesburg. The hesitation that followed told the entire story. Finally, she said he was trying to trap her. Trevor told her it was her own trap, and the entire studio could feel the balance of the conversation shifting completely in his favor. The atmosphere in the room turned almost suffocating as Kelly struggled to maintain control. She insisted she'd always been gracious to Trevor, inviting him onto her show and treating him with respect. Trevor looked at her with a mix of disbelief and disappointment, pointing out that her treatment of him during this interview contradicted everything she claimed. Kelly fired back that he was trying to paint her as a bigot or racist just because she had expressed an opinion about comedy. Trevor corrected her, explaining that she hadn't just expressed an opinion. She had tied his legitimacy as a commentator to his status as an immigrant, then dismissed his reaction as him playing the victim card. The word prejudice landed like a punch. Kelly recoiled, insisting she had friends from all over the world, that she had always supported immigrants. Trevor responded calmly that having diverse friends didn't exempt anyone from exhibiting prejudiced behavior. Even people who believe they're inclusive can slip into patterns of dismissal without realizing it. Kelly insisted she wasn't prejudiced, standing up to match Trevor's posture. Trevor asked her one more time to explain why his South African birth mattered in a conversation about the role of political comedy. She tried to claim she was merely referencing different perspectives, but Trevor pointed out that she specifically referenced him being from another country, as if that alone made his commentary suspect. Her shoulders slumped as the audience sat utterly silent. Trevor's final attempt to get clarity became the turning point. He asked her directly, why introduce his nationality at all? Kelly had no real answer. The minutes that followed felt like an unraveling. Trevor explained that dismissing someone's perspective because of where they're from is the exact behavior marginalized communities encounter constantly, and hearing it from someone in Kelly's position on her own platform had cut deeper than she realized. Kelly insisted she wasn't trying to silence him, only that she wanted to express her view without being attacked. Trevor repeated that he hadn't attacked her, he had challenged her words, and instead of reflecting, she accused him of victimizing himself. Kelly exhaled sharply, trying one last time to steer the interview into calmer waters. But the damage had already accumulated. Trevor looked at her for a long moment, and then, with a quiet finality that filled the entire studio, said, "If you can't recognize what you just did, then there's nothing more for us to discuss." He pushed back his chair. The audience held its breath. Kelly watched in stunned silence as Trevor Noah, usually composed, gracious, and impossible to shake, turned and walked off the set without another word. The studio stayed frozen long after he disappeared backstage, leaving Kelly standing alone beneath the harsh studio lights, facing the weight of everything that had unfolded.